Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me as I create these shiny beaded bead components. I'm calling it a medley because I want to focus on the fact that you can take the exact same starting raw or right angle weave stitch, make it into this beautiful bead, make it your own, and have a ton of variety of different versions how you're going and embellishing the top of the right angle weave. This is an extension of the Pretty Beaded Bead video that we did a number of years ago showing how to do this with 2 needles. I'm going to be doing this shiny beaded bead medley with 1 needle to show you how to do that as a variety. Go ahead and gather up your materials, which can pretty much be anything, and let's get started. So to begin with this medley of beaded beads, you can have a variety of materials. I have sitting here a collection of 6mm beads as well as 3s, 4s, 2s, and then even some 8mm to use as spacers between my beaded beads. I have some 6mm bicones, some 6mm Potomac crystal disco balls, and I have them laid out because my intention is to make 6 beaded beads that are going to be on my memory wire. I have them laid out in groups of 4 of the larger beads. Accompanying those larger beads, I also have smaller beads. They're going to be my 4 through 2mm beads, and I'm laying them out in each grouping, creating a variety so no 2 are alike with 8 of each of those smaller beads. I'll then go back in after the fact and showing you multiple different ways to embellish these beaded beads and add some other crystals on top. Additionally, I have some 11 OC beads as well as 15 OC beads, both Miyuki brand in the Duracoat Champagne and the metallic gold iris, along with the bold copper shiny 8mm pearls. The 8mm pearls again will be spacers. However, once you do the design, you get those material lists at the beginning of the video, you can always go back and even make some beaded beads with the 8mm as well. I'm going to begin just from left to right, create a couple different versions of the beaded bead. So I've already showed you the medley of how I laid out the different beads in my groupings of 4 larger and then my 8 smaller beads. I have a number of the beaded beads done already here to show you some of that variety and just that mix. No 2 beads are the same, so this is why it's ideal to use a variety of materials when creating. To create, I'm going to be doing for this one, to show you how to do it, working with those 6mm bicones in that bronze color. We're also going to throw in some 3mm pearls along the side. And then when it comes to the variety, you can use 15 O's or your 11 O's really for any step. To begin, I want you to have some .006 wildfire beading thread on a needle. I'm using the white color because it's not seen as much through my crystals that are transparent. When you're working with the thread, it's a good idea to go ahead, if you want, and cut about 4 feet of thread. This is going to allow you to do 2 to 3 or even 4 beaded beads, depending on how much variety you do to the top. So once you have your thread and needle ready to go, I want you to take a bead, usually a bead that's not included in the project, and put it on as a stop bead. This bead is going to go down to the end of the thread, and you're just making sure you have enough at the end of the thread to hold on to and make a knot after the fact. I'm going to be doing my right angle weave, adding in my beads in their series of 4. When it comes to right angle weave, we are going to be building 4 blocks or 4 boxes on the design. I'm making sure here that I have my pearls. Now that I've made my bead mat a little bit of a mess, I did them all so that way I could show you each variety as we're doing the steps and the processes. From here, I'm going to add onto my needle and thread my 1 6mm bicone, followed by 11, and then my 3mm pearl, followed by an 11, followed by 1 more of my 6, 11, pearl, 11. Once you have those all on, you're going to let them drop down to that stop bead. We're going to take this and make our first right angle unit. Going through that 6mm bead, the 11, the pearl, the 11. And you want to come out if you know right angle weave, and if you don't, remember we have lots of videos showing you the basics of right angle weave. You want to come out always one of the side beads. So in this case here, we're going to look at our seed bead and our pearl as our bottom and our top. The sides are our 6mm bicones. We're going to make a total of 4 of these right angle units. For the next one, I'm coming out what was the right side of my first box. I'm now going to add my bottom, which is that 11, 3, 11, my 6mm for my right side, and now my 11, 3, and then my 11. I'm going to take my thread and needle, going from the top of the bicone now to the bottom of the same bicone that I was coming out of. That bicone, which was the right of the last right angle unit, is going to become the left of the next right angle unit. Once again, to get to the right side of this one, to be able to add my next box, I'm going to sew through the bottom. When it comes to right angle weave, you're going to be doing a variety of top, then bottom, then top, then bottom. Every other stitch will change, as right angle weave is a series of figure 8s. Once you're again out the right side of the box you're working on, you're going to add another top, which again is my 11 purl 11. I'm going to add my new right side, which is my 6mm bead. Then I'm going to add again my new bottom, which is my 11, then my purl, then my 11. Let that drop all down and sew through that same 6mm bead that you're coming out of, going from the bottom now towards the top where the thread is already exiting. That's my third right angle unit. I've used all 4 of my 6mm beads, and I need to get my thread and needle over to the right hand side. Come down through that bicone, and once again I'm out towards that outer edge. Now when it comes to this portion and creating this bead here, it does not matter in your design if you're using your 11s, your 15s, a 4mm, a 3mm, a 2mm, a 6, a 5, a 4. You just want to make sure, at least for this design, that you're using 2 different sizes. One a little bit bigger, one a little bit smaller. However, you can also make designs where they are all the same size. Here in a version of Anna's beaded bead, all of them are still that 4mm glass. So you can do them all the same size if you want. So the materials that I had laid out and the examples I had laid out, you really, again, I can't stress enough, can kind of make it your own. I'm going to do my last box here, adding in my new bottom, my right hand side, because I know I don't have any more 6mm beads, because remember we laid them out across the top. I'm going to take my thread and needle and go through the bottom of bead number 1, going towards the top. The reason I'm going from the bottom to the top is because these beads that I'm adding are my bottom of my box. I'm then going to do my top of my box, which is one more version of the exact same thing, the 11 purl 11. And then I'm going to sew through the first 6mm that my thread was originally coming out of. Sewing from the top down to the bottom, still in that right angle weave technique. What that's going to do, once you pull it tight, is create a little cubic right angle weave, or my little beaded bead. Now you can see that this beaded bead is really kind of flexible and really easy to bend, push in, and kind of change its shape. The way we're going to correct that and to stabilize it is to take our thread and needle through one whole side of the bead and then through the other. So right now we're going through all of the tops of our right angle weave. The 11-0, the purl 11-0. So I'm going the whole way around that whole section and connecting my top. Once I'm done connecting the top, we're going to switch over and we're going to connect the bottom as well. So I'm connecting all 4 sides. Once I know they're connected, going through here, I'm going to switch over and connect the other side. So I can see how I have that gap in that opening? I know I haven't connected that side yet. However, when I get to the other side, near that stop bead, you can see the thread connecting those 2 gold beads. So I know that's my stopping point. If you're doing the exact same method and way that I am right now, you'll also have your thread exit near your stop bead. From here, I'm going to go through my 6mm round, over to the other side, and once again, now that I'm on the other side, I'm going to connect and sew through all of these sides as well, connecting one to the other, so like the top, the bottom also becomes stabilized and linked between those bottom sections of my right angle weave. Once you're done reinforcing your sides, you just need to get your thread ends to the exact same location. Take off your needle. You can see I had just enough thread. Take off your needle and then tie those two thread ends together after taking off your stop bead. This simple right angle bead or right angle unit bead, you can see right here is one, right here is another, with different versions. This one has 15-0s along with a 6mm disco balls. This one here has some 3mm beads with your bicones. These are all simply strung then on this memory wire. From here and tying off these thread ends, I'm just going to go in with my thread burner and burn down the edges. If you want to, you can take your thread back through one of the 6mm beads, one end, and that way you can pull your knot sometimes inside that 6mm bead so that it disappears. So feeding it back through will kind of make it so you don't see as big of a knot here at the end. The next thing that you can do if you want to is on the next bead, we can go ahead and we can take some thread after this fact and make it on the diagonal. I'm going to make another beaded bead quick and show you how we're going to take that on the diagonal, and then if we want to, even create a nice, there's another diagonal one right there, create a nice Xing effect on top of the beaded bead, which can then grow into anything and be used with anything. That's why I said this is a great bracelet to kind of play with and create and really go to town, becoming addictive of making these beaded beads. After completing one beaded bead, you can now progress to a secondary style, which is basically embellished right angle weave. So I did the whole thing again. Here I did it with the green threads there so you can see a little bit better. And I'm going through, I've reinforced my sides. Coming back over, I'm going to go back through the next 6mm bead. And rather than turning my thread and needle and going towards that stop bead, I'm going to go through the 6mm bead and I'm coming out the right-hand side of that bead. I'm going to pick up, let's say, a 15, then an 11, then we'll do one of my 2mm rounds followed by an 11 and a 15. The options for this center are endless. Once I have these, I'm going to go up to the next 6mm or my next core bead. That 4 is your core, and I'm going to go through from the right-hand side toward the left-hand side. That's going to put these beads on a diagonal, laying right across that right angle unit. From here, again, I'll repeat this 4 times, going across to all my right angle units. One thing to keep in mind is those 4 right angle units are what make the core or the size of the hole of this beaded bead. If you need a bigger hole to fit over, say, an omega chain or a necklace that you've already created, go ahead and check out the idea of creating with 6 beads or 5 beads and changing it up to the count of your choosing and your choice. You can do this down to 3 beads to get a little bit of a triangular look. Coming out the bottom left, again, I'm going into the top right and over to the side. So this is just getting that nice diagonal look across the center of this right angle weave. Many people don't even realize that the beaded beads like this are right angle weave. But right angle weave is so easy to change up and be able to use a lot of diversified products with. Going over here, I'm going to add my last of my diagonal stitch and come on out. Now, just like I did before, I'm coming out through that same 6mm bead. If I want to stop and just have the diagonal look, I'm going to take my thread and needle down those side beads, take the stop bead off, and tie the thread ends together. That gets that look of the diagonal bead going across the top of the bead. So whether or not you use just seed beads, like I did here with the bronze 6s and the gold 4s, you can see 111, 115, 311s, 115 is what I did there. Another version has, again, just 2 15s, my 2mm bead, and then 2 15s as well. Some of Anna's beads here have just an additional 3mm bead on top of 3s and 4s, or 3mm on top of 4s going the whole way around. So you can really play up and change it. If you want to, you can, however, even enhance it more with that right angle weave by making this little X on top of the beaded beads. To make the X on the top of the beaded beads, instead of finishing off your thread and bringing it down to the stop bead, what we're going to do is continue to go through the beads. This time, instead of progressing up, we're going to go down. Going down, I'm going to add a 15 and then an 11, which is the same order that I did previously. But now I'm going to share that center crystal, going through from the left to the right, making that sit in that little opening. Afterwards, I'm going to do the backwards of 11 and 15, and then sew from the right side now to the left of the next 6mm crystal. When I sew from the right to the left of that 6mm crystal, that automatically makes that X effect that happens in the center of that right angle weave. Same thing, you can, if you want to, skip the next one or keep going. So I'm coming out the top left, I'm going to add my 15. Then I'm going to add one more of my 11 seed beads. Of course, I need one more here. Share that 2mm bead that's in the middle, creating a nice, again, Xing effect. And the thing that is going to be a little bit different is if you don't want to see a lot of thread, just give a trial run and see what looks nice, creates the nice X that you don't see a lot of thread on the sides. Push those beads again toward the middle, and you have that nice X effect between your round duo units. You can choose to do every single bead, or if you want to just have a diagonal on one and then on the X on the other, right angle weave, super forgiving, go through one of those bottom beads and then onto the side and do the same thing on the next version. So I had a version here of Anna's beaded beads that I grabbed to show you because, like I said, they're addictive. You can make tons of varieties of examples of them, adding in even some crystals on the top or some Montes on the top, and really go to town. I also grabbed this because if you have a couple extra little beads, she made some really cute spacers in here on the designs that you can just grab 6 or 5 of your bigger beads, make a round loop, and attach them onto your memory wire. I chose memory wire here because I like the separation of the beaded beads. I added in a pattern of my 4mm with my 6 and then up to my 8, downgrading to my 6 and my 4, slid in 3 of my 11 seed beads, and then back to that bronze 3, and then my 6mm bicones on the sides of all of my beaded beads. Repeating the pattern then, I did the exact same thing onto the next beaded bead, and so on and so forth. One of the things with the beaded beads to keep in mind, again, is the amount of beads that you use and the size of beads are going to determine the whole size of the beaded bead. So for this project, I knew I was going to be using some bicones to hold that in place, which actually makes it look like a bigger beaded bead. You can instead use smaller beads if you want that hole to be smaller. The other thing that you can do is you can start to really have fun, go to town, using additional beads on the side. So I had additional beads here that I added in some 4mm. Then I did a little bit of peyote stitch adding on the side and really playing up the design. You can also take what you know and use cubes, bicones, rounds. You can use rondelles. You can go in and use teardrops and really play up the different size and shapes of the beaded beads that you make with this simple right angle weave technique. At the end of my memory wire, I always like to do a little turned over loop, and then I added some little charms or dangles hanging down just to decorate that end and the loop that was created. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this beautiful shiny beaded bead medley. Remember, if you do want to do this, go ahead and look through your stash. It's a great stash buster that you can go in, use 4 of this bead, 8 of this one, 4 of this one, and really have fun creating and making, as I said before, it's kind of addictive, that crazy collection of all of these beaded beads. Remember, if you do need any materials, you can check out the links below in the description to shop with us online. Also, if you've done any of these beaded beads and want to let everybody know and give your feedback in that comment section, any changes, counts, specifics, or numbers that you used, that is an amazing help to this awesome beading community. As always, if you haven't yet, hit that little subscribe button in the corner so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. As always, thanks so much for joining in and watching, and enjoy your new addiction of creating these shiny beaded beads.